And with this, I turn to a very important player in the Indian local ecosystem, EGA Foundation. Viraj, what has been your journey for the last 15 years on digital public infrastructure, working with India, and now increasingly working on globalizing some of those good practices, those lessons, but also discovering new lessons in emerging contexts? Please.
Thank you. Very nice to be here. And given what happened over the last 2 years, it's an appropriate topic. You know, how do we get to SDGs and get humanity in a good place, and what role DPIs can play there? So really great to be here. I think quickly about eGov, we've been around for 2 decades, and actually we have done the journey in reverse. We started as a e-governance actor, working on service delivery, governance, in the trenches in the cities of India, and actually build solutions for multiple cities for a long time in our life. And of course, there were 70, 80 cities we worked with, and there were good results there. But about 5, 6 years ago, we started thinking, how do we scale it? And that's when the whole thinking around how do you build common rails for governance and service delivery, by which I mean things like getting a connection for a water tap, doing a complaint, paying your municipal taxes from a citizen point of view, or getting licenses. From a administrator point of view, getting data about your cities which are reliable, trustworthy. From the front-end employees point of view, having job aids and tools to do their jobs better. So we kind of almost unwounded what we did and built, bottoms-up digital infra. So basically, invoice is invoice, whether you're paying your property tax bill, or you're paying water tax bill, or you're paying your license fee. Or workflow is a workflow, whether you're resolving a complaint, or you're getting a new application for a water connection. So that's how we've rebuilt the infra. So just very quickly, I'll show you at a high level what we do. Just click this. Yeah. So yeah, I think as we see, we build digital infra, but the last part of the sentence is important, that we also work with governments and the markets to drive population scale digital transformation. I'll talk a bit more about it. And there are 3 pillars of our work. One is, of course, building digital infra, but more importantly, catalyzing markets to participate, because that's the only way you can scale. You can build, Pramod was earlier talking about scarce resources. You can bring scarce resources in, but there's implementation capacity in the markets that should be utilized using that. And finally, there's a lot of discussion on capacity of the government, and not the traditional sense of capacity, training and stuff like that, but how do you have an alternative approach to solving societal problems at scale and speed in a sustainable manner? So how do you bring that capacity? So results have been very, very interesting. We are right now in 5 countries, 16 subnational government. Last year, the national government of India adopted the platform for local governance platform for the nation. It's called Upyog. We are in 4 sectors, governance, sanitation, public health, and public finance management. There are 260 million plus citizens who benefit from the services in India. During COVID, 5 countries adopted the DIVOC platform, more than 2.3 billion certificates were issued, and we have 150 plus partners. And what I think I'd like to touch upon is there's a lot of order of magnitude difference in both the public money you spend in these platforms when we run programs and the time. I mean, we've seen a typical statewide implementation in a state like Punjab, which is as big as Ghana. The traditional approach, the estimate was $20 million, but when you use a DPI-based approach, that's like $1.5 million. So that's the level of difference in public money that you spend. And I think the key learning for us for the last 6 years have been, building DPIs which are open, interoperable, reusable is important. But I'll borrow Madhukar's term, resource stack. You also need a resource stack to capacitize the system to leverage it. So if you look at it, on the top are the DPIs, digital building blocks, some end user solutions. Everything is open source. It's on GitHub, open APIs and specs. But then work with the markets, catalyze ecosystems. So we have an academy called Digit Academy. Last year we delivered 15,000 hours of trainings. We have documentation, playbooks, Of course, a lot of technical libraries and technology tools that people can use. So not just the technology tools, but also programmatic tools for ecosystem to use it, how to run a program leveraging it. And we provide support, L3 support for all our partners. On the government side, one of the biggest challenges is reimagination. How do you reimagine using these kind of infra? And that starts with, doing workshops, but also what we do is, one of the tests of a DPI is whether it works in a multiple context seamlessly. So we work with governments to do exemplars. When we say exemplars, they're not pilot, because you can do a pilot in one city. But when you do exemplar in 166 cities in Punjab, all the various contextual problems kind of surface up, and then you really test whether the DPI can address all the use cases and all the contextual problems that you have. In terms of, we do policy and strategy advisory with the government, and also as a part of governance, when governments work with markets, we actually help them govern the program from a technology design, program design perspective, as part of the governance. So major point is that this is what really made the difference from a scale perspective. Once you had the resource stack, that's when the magic starts happening. And these are some of the numbers. Again, you see initially when we made the switch to the DPI-based strategy, initially it was slow, but once the ecosystem starts acting, and that's the real power. I think somebody used the term, it's not what you have on the platform, but what happens on the top of the platform. So when people start interacting, people start using, that's when, number of programs went up, number of partners went up, citizens, so it's like a hockey stick. And what we're seeing very encouragingly is, like, e-justice. There are actors in the ecosystem, non-profits, for-profits are coming together, and they're saying, how can we use Digit to solve some of those problems? So I think the critical thing is, if you have a resource stack, then people will have a way of engaging with the platform and the DPI. Sorry, I'm using the term interchangeably. It's like we've used platform for such a long time, but DPI is a right term. And of course, the DPI is able to design right. But if you have resources that you make available to the ecosystem, and actually there are attractive markets, then I think the participation happens. And then really it's not limited by what eGov Foundation thinks or what a particular ministry thinks. It's basically how people reimagine how they can use this DPI and the resources to solve new problems. We never thought, when we started 6 years ago, that we'll be in sanitation, water, and PFM. We thought we'll be only solving urban. But now there's justice, water security. Various people are working on that, and that's the real power of DPI, is that you're solving problems that you can't imagine will happen 6 years later, because you're creating those common railroads. So I think that's the main point I wanted to land in terms of, that having the, enabling the capacity of the system to solve is very, very important. Thank you very much.
I wanted to ask the panelists, particularly Mr. Viraj and Mr. Madhukar Shetty, as to how do you think public policy making can further enhance DPIs being leveraged by women? We're seeing that gradually we're realizing how women are using DPI more and more, just not for their economic empowerment, but also for their overall health, livelihood enhancement. But we still see that the divide is not yet bridged. We still see a lot of women not being able to make the best potential of it. So from your experience of advising governments, of knowing the policy environment, where do you think more could be done? And that will be helpful for us also to inform our initiatives. Thank you.
So your question is on the gender equality in term, on technology?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
We see women still not being very comfortable with the digital platforms because of gaps in vernacular language usages, because of their environment where they are not able to use the platforms very well, skilling issues. And while a lot of work is happening both by the government and the private sector, still we are yet to bridge the gap. So any suggestions, any advice from your side?
So definitely there are design things you can do around language, around medium. For example, we're discussing over lunch, voice activated. A lot of people are comfortable using voice thanks to WhatsApp. Can you give channels which are easier, less intrusive and less kind of difficult to, less frictional? I think the two things from our perspective, I can definitely say over last 5 years in our product management function, we've gone from, no women to 50% women, because I think you need to have representation to design right. I think that's very important for us. We really look at diversity within our organization to see whether we can design or not. From a policy perspective, I think measuring the gender-based data is very important. So I think everything you do, for example, sanitation platform in Odisha, it's a standard report which comes out, how many women self-help groups are using it, how much sewage has been disposed, and all those kind of things. Because a lot of times the gender disaggregated data is not really available, and that really impedes the policy work. So we are working with CPR, for example, in Odisha to look at the data and see what else can be done from a design. So whenever you're designing the M&E frameworks, measuring gender dimension is very important. So that's the second thing. Thirdly, I think I would say just from a participation perspective, when you do on-ground events and everything, we need to get more women in the, one of the things to start measuring it, how many the trainers are women, right? Because usually you have a large hall and somebody stands up and delivers a training. So I think a combination of those, I'm not an expert in policy, but I think combination of those things from a practically what we see on ground, I think will move the needle. We still have quite a long distance to go.
Thank you.